You know, we've just got so many things to get cracking on that with your permission, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So I hope that's okay. If you, by any chance, are not on mute, if you would be so kind as to go ahead and do a mute, hit the mute button, that would be much appreciated. I'm looking for one more thing here. And so I'm going to dive right in here, see if I can get my, there we go. Okay, so you did receive a handout that there's something you can take notes on, but no worries. We'll be sending, or we're recording this, so we'll be happy to share it with you later on. I also want to let you know that we do on our website, if you were to go up to this section called videos, inside there, we've got a whole series of different interviews and various things, but there's a 12 video podcast series or video series on retirement and called the top 10 planning mistakes that will keep you from retiring well and what you can do about them. And that was, I had really no intention of doing the video series. I just found out though that people were really unprepared for retirement. And so I thought, as I began more and more to get into it, became more of a passion project. And eventually we did a whole video series on it. And I kind of think that that's going to happen with this series for women as well. As I'll explain in a moment, what prompted me to actually get started on this, the more I've been reading and researching, there are some very unique issues that are, I'm going to let some people come in from the waiting room. There are some issues that are very unique to women. And so we're going to just only have time to cover a few of them today, but there's lots more. So anyway, I invite you to go to the video series, and it's completely free, and we just want people to learn more. Now, this video today is going to come with a warning. One of the #1 causes of divorce is financial conflict. Money creates conflict, not only between spouses, but also between parents and children, friends. So one of the things we're going to share is also hopefully some tips on how to avoid some of the verbal conflict that might come up otherwise. So for today, let's dive in right in. I've got 3 goals for today, or maybe 4, 3.5, if you will. First of all, and most importantly, is to just celebrate and give thanks for women. And also, this is the counselor in me. I also want to try to reduce the chances of conflict, both about money, but also between us men and women. As I mentioned, there are now over almost 20 unique challenges that I've discovered for women about money and finances and retirement, especially. Today, we're just simply going to tackle and look at 5 of them more in depth, but there's lots more. So hopefully, at least by these big 5, we'll be able to start thinking about how do we then address them, especially when we start talking about some tips and thoughts from over 30 years of practice in the field, sitting down with hundreds and hundreds of women and men, business owners and not. And then the last thing is I hopefully will create a few ways to stay in contact with one another. If nothing else, as I mentioned later on, we do a 20-minute complimentary conversation. So if there's anything you want to talk about, whether it's wills and trusts, insurance, investments, retirement, other things, we do that on a complimentary basis. Also, there's some different things we have for handouts and daily. Some of them are daily encouragements, what we call quote actions. Great quotes by famous people followed up by an action for the day. So we send out literally hundreds and hundreds of those every day, as well as our monthly newsletter and some other things. I also want to give a special shout out to a buddy of mine, Mayor of San Marcos, oops, that's a slip, San Marcos, Rebecca Jones. Rebecca is co-hosting a podcast series with her daughter, and it debuts today. It's called CEO. And they're interviewing women that have overcome tremendous obstacles and have achieved also tremendous success. So check it out. Go wherever you get your podcasts. I feel like I'm on PBS right now, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. But go check out Mayor of San Marcos, Rebecca Jones. Go to her LinkedIn site as well, and you'll find out more about it. So thank God for you incredible women. You are in our bedroom, the master bedroom, we have a big full-length mirror, and most mornings I feel pretty good. It's like, okay, great, especially when I finish doing my bridging and I'm going, yeah. But there's sometimes when I really don't want to see what I see in the mirror. And yet in relationships, especially, you women are our full-length mirrors. I see things in my wife that she reflects back to me sometimes, and I don't like what I see. But it gives me a chance to be able to work on that and ask, hey, how am I doing in that particular area? Someone once said that women are the heavenly sandpaper for those of us. So you ladies help us become better versions of ourselves. There's just something that's built into you. It's a superpower. I'm going to talk more about it in a minute, but it's a superpower. There's a BS filter. There's also a relationship manual that's built into every woman. Not that men don't have the potential for it, but for the most part, it's just not in our operating system, but it's built in to women. It's truly amazing. Where would we be without women in our lives? You bring color to the black and white world of men. I mean, this left brain type of world, you truly bring the color to it. And not only that, but women just simply, our children would just simply not survive a generation if it was just up to us guys. It takes the nurturing and the caring and the sacrifices that you women make just without blinking an eye. Again, I watch my wife, not only with our boys, but also with our grandson. I mean, there's nothing that she wouldn't do to make a difference back in their lives, and now for our daughters-in-law as well. So you women, I tell you. On top of that, I'm grateful for I've got two great heroes in my life. One's alive, one's gone to heaven to be with the Lord. My wife, some of you know, is a survivor of the killing fields of Cambodia. She lived for 3.5 years in a prison camp. Her father was murdered in front of the family by the Khmer Rouge in the war. Even after coming to America, she was beat up daily by various gangs in the areas in the neighborhood where she went to school. She wore long sleeve shirts that would hide the bruising. I mean, this is one lovely, petite, but don't mess with her kind of gal. And my mom grew up in Scobie, Montana, dryland wheat cattle. So when the cattle prices and the wheat prices were good, they had something to eat. Oftentimes the prices weren't good and they literally were starving. For most of her life, even though my father was very successful as a business owner, she still made many of her own clothes, beautiful clothes. And that was with being blind in one eye. So lots of women in my life that are my heroes. There's women every woman in our Wealth Legacy Group tribe is very unique. We have survivor from Nicaragua. We have Hispanics, we have Asians, we have, basically we don't even have any Caucasians. We do have a Ukrainian, so I guess there's our Caucasian, but various ethnicities that are just amazing. So, and is it any wonder that our boys have married extraordinary women as well, and Marjorie and Kwa, our daughters-in-law. So we're grateful for them. And not only that, but I think the business world, frankly, is much more kind and fair. And it's also have greater integrity and much higher ethics because women are involved in business and getting more so. So, those are just some of the reasons that women need to be celebrated. You have a superpower. I said a moment ago that we men just don't, and it's this, things. I mean, you may not even know why you know things, but you just know things. Sometimes you can't even put your finger on it, but it's just there's just something off about that person or just something that doesn't feel right. Now, us men, we can develop this superpower, but it's like comparing a high school athlete to a professional. We're just not even in the same class. So it is something that if we men don't listen to you women and ignore that superpower, we're doing so at our own peril. Now, I've got to admit, in my early years of marriage, I was not very good at listening to what my wife, nor did I seek out her opinion as often. But I have really come to appreciate it. And frankly, I need that gold seal of approval from her before I'm going to move on to some of the big important things. She sees things that I don't see. I truly value her opinion, and it just I make better decisions as a result of her and her input. Now, we'll get to the money stuff here in a minute, but from us men, since I got the floor, if it'd be okay, can I just say that, ladies, when you're right, which is most of the time, would you please resist the temptation to rub it in? I mean, it is, after all, a superpower. So, okay. Likewise, please, none of the, I tried to warn you. By the way, not that this happens in my house, but, I've heard in other men's homes that this does happen. It definitely does not create a bond of support for you to say that. So just word of the wise. And in fact, one more thing while I'm here on behalf of my male band of brothers, that's just, please don't give up on us, men. We truly can be trained. And by the way, I'm seeing a chat that's coming in. I do want to remind you that if you want to, yes, thank you. Yes, we can be trained. If you do have comments, feel free to go to the chat bar. I will be watching and try to include as many of those as I can. So yes, we really can be trained. And one last thing, we don't mean to try and fix or solve things when you're sharing with us. That really, it's kind of the way we're wired. I mean, that's our superpower. It's in our DNA. So do be patient with us, and perhaps try this at work, maybe, or at home. Probably don't want to do this exactly at work the way I'm suggesting, but try this at home. With patience and kindness, look in the eyes of your loved one and just say, I know you're just trying to help. I really need you to just listen and not try to fix this for me. Are you in a place right now where you'll be able to do that for me? And then, by the way, if you do want our suggestions or our input, would you please let us know? Most of the time, I've come to understand my wife really doesn't need my opinion, doesn't need my help, doesn't need me to fix anything. I mean, she lived through the prison camps, for crying out loud. So she doesn't need my help. Most of the time, she just needs me to listen. But it does help me up front to understand, no, just shut up, listen, because then I can relax and really listen better. So anyway, hope that's helpful. Now, in a minute, we are going to look at women's 5 unique challenges for finances and retirement, but there is one last point, and this goes to all of us, men and women alike, especially for those of us who have lived long and seen much. At the risk of now violating this rule myself, be wary of giving advice, especially when it's not been asked for. There's a saying, the wise don't need it and fools won't heed it. So if you do have advice and you're just bursting at the seams to share it, but it's not been requested, perhaps you might try this. Just say, I do have some thoughts that I think may be helpful if you'd like to hear them. Or you could say observations too. That's a good guy word. But us guys really like that, observations. It's very non-threatening. So you could try that one too. The other thing is, you say this, or I have found good ways of handling this when I faced a similar situation in the past, if you'd ever like to hear about it. Now, they may very well, and probably will, encourage you to keep going and go ahead and share. But if not, let it pass and don't be offended. So, finish up our first section here. Thank God for you incredible women. On behalf of women, children everywhere, thank you. Now, I am going to talk about something that does bother women. I'm going to give you a quick snapshot and then we'll dive into the five major issues. But I always think it's frankly not fair for someone who advises others in their money management to not tell you how they're doing. So in other words, if I'm going to sit down and have a chance of sitting down with you and talking about your money, you should see how we're doing with my own money. So this is an actual snapshot from my own profit sharing plan. My attorney sends this to me every morning. Thank you very much, Brian. I know you're listening and I do appreciate this. And I want to also point out that past performance does not guarantee future results. Nonetheless, last year was a pretty tough year in the investment world. I'm not telling you anything that you probably don't already know. And in fact, it may have been a real rough year for your investments. And that's why we need to talk about this, because there are different ways in which monies can be managed in such a way to create a buffer to make sure that we can take out some of that volatility. And so what I'm just going to point out is that over the last 12 months, this is incredible, and I'm not promising this ever again, but over the last 12 months, my own account was up over 44% net of all fees, with the exception of an advisor fee. Since I opened this account back almost 2 years ago, I'm up almost 20% annualized compound return. And the reason we're doing so well is because this program invests across a whole 11 different sectors of the US economy, but it also has a shock absorber so that when things go dicey and things fall, this steps in, moves the money to a safe place, and then moves it back in again when it's safe to come back into the water, as they say. So if you have to leave early, I just wanted to give that to you. I wanted to kind of whet your taste buds, though, because we'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, let's dive into the second section of the talk, which is 5 of the greatest challenges, unique challenges, I might say, that women face about income and retirement. So sadly, if you will, 82% women's incomes as compared to men across the board are 82% of what men earn overall. Now, that's not news to anybody, I'm sure, but the good news is this: there is progress. There's some organizations that measure women's equality or inequality with income, and they are now doing annual reports. In fact, even have an annual day. I think it's coming at the end of March. I think it's March 31st. They are seeing less bias in the workforce. As more and more women are in the workforce, they're starting to see some of those inequities start to even out. In fact, if you take and there are both adjusted and unadjusted comparisons, the 82% is the unadjusted comparison. However, when they adjust for equal education, experience levels, so forth and so on, in most cases, and certainly in the professions, women are at 98% of what men are earning. Now, it still should be 100%, don't get me wrong, and don't hear me wrong. But for those situations where they've been able to take out the other variables, frankly, it's looking very, very good for women. That's great progress. There's still more room to go, though, and there's a long way. There's still great inequities for many reasons, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But because women's incomes are at 82% of men's, what's that mean? Well, you know, this is kind of be like the duh moment, but less income means there's less savings for emergencies or opportunities. Brian and I, our in-house attorney, and I did a newsletter, and Brian, you'll help me out here, but it was something like 2/3 of Americans didn't even have $400 to take care of an emergency expense. Now, that's pretty scary when you get down to it. Now, there's a tremendous, significantly disturbing statistics of how few dollars are set aside for retirement by all ages. And it's not just because of millennials. In fact, 1 in 4 millennials has already saved up over $100,000. So for you millennials out there, hats off to you. We've got a lot probably we could learn from you. You're not skewing the statistics in a bad way. In fact, if anything, you're helping the statistics go a little bit better. But getting back, less income means less savings for emergencies and opportunities. Also, it's therefore less that's going to retirement. Because again, many don't qualify for a 401k at work, or they're not having money to put into an IRA, which also translates into less money for Social Security. Now, one of the things about Social Security, it is skewed, so lower incomes get a higher percentage, but still the point is that less money going in, it takes 35 years, the highest earning years, and since many women are out of the workforce for a period of time, they're not getting, they're missing out on some of those 35 years. So along with this challenge of lower income, women are just much more vulnerable from a security standpoint. And this is especially true in the loss of a spouse, whether that comes from death or disability or a long-term care event, or in the event of separation or divorce. It is significantly impactful. And it's also then compounded by the next major issue we'll look at, and that is the challenges of the differences of life expectancy between men and women. Now, some kind of good news, I think exciting news, is look at this. In 1911, women's life expectancy from birth until they were expected to pass away was just over 54 years. By 100 years later, 2014, it had gone to 82.7. That is the time of birth expected then for life expectancy, 82.7. Now it's come back just a little bit. I found this fascinating. In 2000, it just has, these are the latest statistics, it's come back almost 2 years, mostly because of COVID, but also because of the sharp rise in drug deaths in America. So if we've seen, though, a nearly 30-year rise in life expectancy over a 100-year period, what are we going to see going forward? I mean, my friends over at the La Jolla Institute of Immunology tell us that they are this close to coming up with a cure for Zika, for some of the other things that have been plaguing us. And as we've seen with this tremendous truncation of time, we now have a vaccine to go after these viruses. And in fact, this might surprise you, how many vaccines prior to the COVID vaccines, how many vaccines did we actually have? All the hundreds of years out there, how many vaccines did we have? Thousands? Hundreds? Nope, less than 30. That's it. So we're opening the doors. What we've seen, not only with this COVID vaccine, but what we've seen is that it's given us greater opportunities to be able to come up with solutions in a much faster pace. So 100-year extension, in 100 years, having almost a 30-year extension on life. One of the gentlemen that I interviewed a few years ago, who was responsible for mapping the human genome, fascinating guy. But Craig said that we are within a couple of decades, just 20 years, maybe a little longer, when we will come to the point of what's called stasis. And stasis means that at that point, we will decide how long we want to live. Now that's a little sobering and scary for some. I mean, I've set my thermostat for 147. I want to see New Century come in, but I've ordered 2 of everything, by the way. So I'm just, waiting. It's kind of stocking up. But anyway, the point is we're at a place where it's especially important for women. You need to be looking ahead and planning for yourselves. And with men, it's a little bit different. There's about a 5 or 6 year difference between women and men for life expectancy. But the other part of it, and I've got a chart here you are not going to be able to see, but love to get this to you, so let me know if you want it. It's called the Key Financial Data. And if you we'll email it to you, we'll mail it to you, whatever your preference is. But over here, if you take a group of 70-year-olds, take 1,000 70-year-olds, male and female, at what age would half of that group of 1,000, at what age would half of them be dead? Well, the answer might shock you because it's 27.4 or 97.4. Now, again, women, you're helping us men out, so thank you very much on that number. But the point is that if you make it to 70, the probabilities are you're going to go a whole lot further because the things that kill you before 70 are behind you. So the question is, are you planning? In your mind, I ask people, how old are you going to live to be? And they usually tell me, well, my mom lived to, my dad, my grand. Doesn't matter. Those ages are irrelevant because for most of us, we're going to 100, 120 easily, or maybe not easily, but we're going a lot longer than most people expect, which is why you need to talk to my friends in the real estate world, talk with us about equities, because you need to continue to own real estate and equities in your portfolio for the rest of your life, because you need the growth. Now, I found this to be rather sobering, and I've looked in different places. It does appear to be true, although I've seen different sightings. So I'm still on the hunt, but I believe this is to be true. And that this 80% of men die with a partner or spouse, but 80% of women die single. That's a sobering statistic. It's again, on top of that, not only because they end up being single, but also because you're living longer, your money has to last even longer. So that's when you talk to Amy and some of the others that are in the real estate world to make sure that you've got assets that are continuing to grow, and an income stream that's going to be continuing to grow as well. And on top of that, older women are, because they're typically living alone, are much more likely to be at poverty level. So it's a very important statistic to be aware of and to be dealing with and planning for. Now, what's the third one? Women continue to serve as more so than men or children, but they are the primary caregivers for children and adults. I mean, we've seen this certainly as with education, where because the governor's mandates, whether you agree with them or not, for education, many women are at home trying to juggle two careers, getting the kids being taught at the same time they're trying to manage their own career. And it's been tough. We're talking about my sister-in-law and others that have had to deal with that. So this is not uncommon. Caregivers often leave their careers or they reduce their work hours, that's why that 82% statistic, that's why that's happening, is because in order to get the flexibility of hours, they have to agree to taking less compensation or earning less overall. Not only that, but because they're out of the workforce or they're only working part-time, they lose out on other job opportunities such as promotions, raises, additional training. So it is, I'm going to move something off my screen here because I'm not able to see something real well. But those caregivers also oftentimes will take over or help with the financial responsibility of the people they're caring for. So not only are they not making as much income or they've dropped out of the income production, but they're also then taking what reserves they've got many times to care for a parent or an ailing child or such as might be the situation. And number 4, women are much more likely, I've alluded to this just a moment ago, to work part-time and to work in industries that themselves have lower wages, so they will have more flexibility to care for their parents, care for a sibling. Again, makes savings difficult. Fewer hours of work, obviously, again, means that women have fewer opportunities for employee benefits, such as healthcare, disability insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance, or to be able to participate in a 401k plan or retirement plan. Yes, you can put money into an IRA, but it's not the same. You've got $6,000 that you can put into an IRA versus $19,500 that you can put into a 401k. Plus, you can put $1,000 into an IRA if you're age 50 and up, but you can put $6,500 additionally into a 401k. Or this year, you can put away $26,000 into a 401k plan. And then if you own your own business, then we can also put some additional money away to put you to almost to $60,000, between $56,000 to $62,000 every year. And then there's some other plans where we can even put away a couple $100,000 a year. So by not being able to access retirement plans, it also limits the amount of money that women can put away. The last point is that the women are much more likely than men to spend their retirement savings helping their kids or grandkids to go to school, to get a car, to pay for medical expenses. And here's the thing, it's one pastor once told me that it was, we need to learn how to be able to be sensibly selfish. Sometimes both with our time, but also women, you need to have some boundaries with your money. Because it's your giving nature, your nurturing heart, you're much more likely to give away money. And there are fewer opportunities once you're in retirement to make up for money that's been given away. So your kids are not going to be on the street if they don't get to Harvard. There are many times I've seen parents putting money into education for their kids when there are other alternatives available for them that would be much less expensive. My wife, when she was a single parent, she worked 3 jobs. She refused to accept any financial assistance from the county because it was a pride issue. As an Asian, that was just, you didn't do that. So, there are ways that our kids, if they need to go to school, and they can find a way there. I know this is controversial. I understand I'll probably get a couple of hate emails for saying this, but women, you've got to be careful and draw a line. Just be aware of it. Sorry, I picked up over a year ago something that they still haven't figured out what it is. And so I sound like I've got a virus, and I probably do, but I'm healthy as can be. And I just sound like I'm already keel over. So my apologies. There is something, though, that is a dangerous trend that we certainly see in America. It's getting more and more and more, and it's a victim mentality. So as I go through these 5 trends, it could sometimes bring out a social worker response. My wife was a social worker for over 15 years, and we both have very tender hearts towards the poor and the underprivileged. But this is not an issue for government to come in and rescue us. We're seeing some dangerous trends that we should make reparations for certain races or certain genders or sexual orientation, other situations. And again, I'm sure I'm going to offend somebody here, but point is, Scott Peck had a book years ago that came out called A Road Less Traveled. And the opening line was, "Life is difficult." That was the opening line of the book. And then he goes on to say, but when you decide that life is going to be difficult, it becomes less difficult. And my wife pointed out to me a wonderful response to something over the weekend. And a woman wrote that she was really fed up with this mentality that we needed to be giving away government benefits and providing for other people. And she said, look, the world owes us one thing, only one thing, and that's oxygen. That's always a great quote. And then there's another one is Candace Owens, a remarkable Black speaker, writer, advocate, conservative. And she said, we all deserve the same opportunity, but we don't all deserve the same outcome. We need to be given the same chances in life. And I look at so many people, both in my own family, my own wife is a great example, who came with literally nothing and who built things. As I say, at one point she was working 3 jobs just to make sure that the boys were able to participate in sports, go to school, and they did very well. But we don't have to be giving handouts. We need to be teaching people how to work their way up. So anyway, I'll leave it there. So let's, on the last part of our experience for today, let's just talk a little bit about what I've seen from over 30 years of experience in the field. And so if you hear nothing else in these last few minutes, here it is. We live in America, and for all its faults, it's truly the greatest country in the world. I've had the privilege of being in many different countries around the world, both third and fourth world, as well as many first world. And I can tell you there's no country I would rather live in. And my wife feels the same way. We're very proud Americans. The government says, look, it's important to support the social well-being of the country. And so most wealthy, affluent Americans understand that. We have an obligation to support the social well-being of the country. But what most wealthy or affluent Americans don't understand is the government gives us a choice in how we do that. Now, if we don't choose, they do that for us. And what's that called? Anybody? I know you're on mute, but yeah, that's called taxes. Okay. But if we choose ahead of time to find ways that we want to support the social well-being of the country that's more in alignment with our own value system, that's okay with the government. In fact, this is a radical thought, but it's true nonetheless. Capital gains taxes are optional. We don't have to pay them when we have a liquidity event, when we sell stock, when we sell a business, when we sell appreciated real estate. We don't have to pay them if we choose a different way that we're going to support the social well-being of the country. Federal estate taxes, federal death taxes, they're optional as well. So even though now it's being discussed that estate taxes are going to be reinstituted or brought down to a lower level, that's only if individuals are not choosing to give back to the community to make a difference back in their world in a lasting positive way that's in their own alignment. And anywhere from a third to a half of income taxes is also optional if you're choosing how you want to support the social well-being of the country. I'm not an anarchist. This is something that comes right out of the tax code. It's the Tax Reform Act of 1969. There have been a few improvements since then, but these are things that are built into the tax code, which makes us able to have liquidity events or sell assets. So if you have a liquidity event planned for this year, you're selling some property. I've got some dear friends of mine, they're selling their property, their home up in Northern California for millions of dollars. But we're looking at the portion that's above the exemptions. And there are several different techniques that we can use that will either eliminate the excess gain or at least defer it for 30 years. Now, what if you had a liquidity event last year? Is there still anything that you can do this year to take care of last year? Sadly, the answer is yes and no. Sadly, the big work that we can do has to happen the same tax year. So for example, we got hired by this absolutely charming older couple. They're really two of our very favorites. We love all of our clients, but these two we love especially. And they sold some property in their business for $7.5 million several years ago. And in the course of it, created a $2.1 million tax bill. We were able to come in because it was the same tax year, and it showed two different strategies that gave them over $3 million of additional tax deductions, which brought their tax not to zero, but it took it from 2.1 million down to 937,000. Is that right, Brian? It's either 937 or 947. So it didn't make it go away, and that's still a lot of tax for this country boy, but that they were thrilled to pieces. So we were able to do that because, in large part, because it was the same tax year. But if you had a liquidity event last year and now we're in 2021, there are some limited things that still can be done for you. For all of you, not only if you have a high deductible health insurance plan, you can also create your own health savings account. And that means even in 2021, you can take a deduction of approximately $3,500. And if it's a husband and wife, yeah, if you're both covered by that same high deductible healthcare plan, that's about $7,000, $7,200 that you can take this year and have it come off of last year's tax return. On top of that, there are some very specialized type of retirement plans that you may be eligible for. It's better if you are self-employed or if you own the company. Yep, there are things we can do there. Sometimes you actually create additional hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax deduction in 2021 to have it affect 2020. Now, if you're an employee or if you're not self-employed, more limited. Health savings account certainly is one option. Creating an IRA if you were not participating in 401k is another option, but they're limited there. And then at the very outset of our sharing time, I mentioned that certainly right now we've got a lot of folks that are worried about the up and down of the stock market and their returns. And I shared with you what we do for ourselves, what I use for my wife and I, that is cross-sectional. It's in 11 different sectors of the US economy. So when things are going up, like I think the next couple of years, it's going to be a wonderful time to be in the equity markets. This $1.9 trillion surplus, when it hits the money that's going to be coming out from Washington, that's going to be like somebody dropped a boulder in the middle of a lake, and the ripples that are going to be coming from that are going to be significant. So this is a great time to reallocate. So if you are depending on what age you are, but you may want to consider, if you're at 60%, you may want to consider moving to 80. If you're at 80, you may want to consider moving to 85 or 90. If you are age 60 and above, you can actually pull your funds from your 401k and create your own self-directed IRA. We did that for a number of clients last year, and then we were able to put in this particular platform that got the returns that I was showing you earlier. But with much more stability, much less wiggle, because that's the important thing. Even when we're accumulating money, we want to keep that wiggle as little as possible, but especially when we're taking money out, it's even more critical that we have very little wiggle. And that's what that platform does that we use. Maybe you don't have a will. Maybe you don't have a living trust. We have an attorney on staff. We don't draft documents for clients, but we do review them all day long. And so we can have a conversation about that as well. Let's see, Lizette, you asked a question about what age. Let's chat about that because I'm not sure that I'm following that question, but anyway, give a shot. We want to hear what's going on with you anyway and get caught up on your wonderful business in Vegas. If you guys need an event manager, we got somebody who can take care of everything for you. Lizette and her husband do a great job. Maybe you've got insurance questions. Again, maybe you don't have long-term care insurance, or maybe your parents don't, but you've heard about that, the importance of it. In California, you can blow through a lot of money in a hurry, and from $8,500 to $10,000 a month in long-term care expenses. So you can run through a lot of money very quickly. So for you women, it's especially important that you start planning early. And oftentimes it starts with baby steps. In fact, that leads me to my favorite book so far of 2020. In fact, it might even be one of my favorite books of all time. It's called Tiny Habits by Dr. B.J. Fogg. He's a professor at Stanford. He is actually, a couple of his students started Instagram. I mean, he's a fascinating entrepreneur. But as I think my wife will attest, I started implementing some of those baby steps from this book called Tiny Habits that have been transformational in our home life, in our work life, in my work life. So I encourage you to get that book, but at the same time, I also want to give you best counsel. It used to be that we were told that we should be setting aside 10% of our income towards retirement. Well, the true reality is that most people didn't even do that. Now I'm telling you that the best counsel is at 17%, and especially for women, it might even be higher, because you live longer and you have less opportunities for saving money. So that can be intimidating. But one of the things we want to do, I spoke earlier that we've actually seen life expectancies come down a little bit because of the increase in drug deaths here in America. So there's negative addiction, but there's also positive addiction. And positive addiction would be an example of even just setting money aside $100 a month, $200 a month, $50 a month. The goal is not the amount of money. The goal is, as Tiny Habits professor Dr. Fogg tells us, it's getting that emotion. We can create a new habit literally within weeks because of a positive emotion that we get. So it's start having money automatically transferred if you don't right now. Start small and build from there. 17% might seem like a hurdle you're never going to jump across, but it starts very small and builds from there. So again, let's connect. That's the last thing that I wanted to make sure that we got to do, is to connect. We do offer a 20-minute complimentary conversation just to talk about whatever's on your mind, whether it's financially or from a planning standpoint. Also, we invite you to sign up for quote actions, which I mentioned a moment ago. Here's an example. You can't live a perfect day without doing something for someone who will never be able to repay you. From the famous college basketball coach for UCLA, John Wooden. And then the action was, your action for today is to make an anonymous donation or do something nice for someone without them finding out who did it or that you did it. So as I say, we send out hundreds of these every day. You can choose to get one of these a day, twice a week, or once a week. And so if you'd like to sign up for quote action, if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, or just simply for the 20-minute financial review, if you just text WLG to the number 22828, it's WLG to the number 22828, that'll get things started, and we can go ahead and get you, reach out to you and find out what would be helpful to you. And let's see, I've also got another chat here. Yes, thank you. Someone wrote and say that they get them every day and they're awesome. Thanks for that shout out. We appreciate it. So everyone, that is all for today. So let's just take a recap. First of all, thank God for you women. You absolutely make the world a place that is so exciting, so wonderful to come to. So grateful for you. So thank you for all you do. Hopefully some of the things I shared at the beginning might be helpful, since money can kind of get the wheels off the truck and even the closest relationships. Hope some of those ideas were helpful. And again, as I say, if you want to copy the video or our audio and such, just let us know. We'll get it to you. We looked at 5 unique challenges. That's not all of them. There's more, unfortunately. So women, it's really important that you start, if you haven't sat down and really gotten serious about your planning, now is the time. Also just shared some tips and thoughts from over 30 years of practice of I've seen what works well. And then hopefully you'll reach out so we can stay in touch with one another. Many of you I know we already send out quote actions, or you're on our monthly newsletter list. We'd love to be connected with all of you. So that's it for today. I'm RJ Kelly. I want to thank you for being with us, for making time in your busy day to be with us. I want to thank the Wealth Legacy Group team, especially my wife and Olha, who put much of this together behind the scenes. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm giving some lovely texts and chats from the chat box. If there's anything else that you want to tackle for today, or a question you've got, please let me know. Well, thank you. I'm glad that you like the new haircut. And great. Love these texts that are coming across. Thank you. So without further ado, God bless. We live in the best country in America. I hope this has been helpful. And again, just reach out to us. We'd love to sit down and be whatever kind of help that we could be an encouragement, just as you're an encouragement to us. Bye for now.